One after another. A husband dead of natural causes.
There was no autopsy, no testing. He was cremated. His ashes were scattered at a lake. That was it.
A son dead from seizures.
And I'm like, oh my God, this mother must be devastated. She lost her husband, now she loses her son.
A daughter hanging on to life in the ER with flu-like symptoms.
It's bad.
Okay.
She was as close to death as you could get.
And a mother and wife, a devout church organist, left to shoulder the burden.
Either this is a terribly unlucky family or something fishy happened here.
But just how fishy? That's what police want to find out in a stunning interrogation.
Dear God.
Tonight, piecing together the secrets in a highly unusual family, the tell-all diary. Their bedside reading,
We had a book on poisonous plants.
their garage, always prepared for an emergency,
Who has antifreeze in the summertime?
and a very strange way of expressing sympathy.
I didn't want another one to die in the house.
And why is that?
Because houses are nasty after somebody's died in it.
So who's left in the family, if they can survive long enough?
Did you think somebody else was going to be next?
Talking on camera for the first time only to 2020, the daughter who did live to tell.
I consider them as killers who hate me.
What's wrong with these people?
What were you thinking at that point?
Oh God, another one.
A family plot.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us this Saturday night. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. David is away. Get ready for something you rarely see outside a courtroom. All the detective work and the interviewing of suspects that goes into catching a killer. It is an investigation that 2020 worked on for 2 years. A bizarre family plot that culminates in the discovery of a secret diary. And this ominous line from it that says so much. Only the quiet ones will be left. Here's Deborah Roberts.
At the foothills of the Ozarks sits Branson, Missouri, the Las Vegas of the Midwest. Drive 45 miles north on Old Route 66 and you're in Springfield, a tranquil college town where the buckle of the Bible Belt meets beer joints. Here on Page Street, in a modest 900-square-foot home, Diane Stouty and husband Mark embody that unlikely mix of holy water and firewater. She's the church organist down at Redeemer Lutheran. He's the lead singer and guitarist of a local blues band, Messing with Destiny. You'll get the irony a little later. Together, the couple, former college sweethearts, are raising 4 kids in that small house. 6 people, 3 small bedrooms, 1 bath. Tight quarters for what looks like a tight family. Did you get any sense of what their relationship was like?
As far as I knew, Mark's wife was great.
Charles Alexander is Mark's close buddy and the drummer in the band.
He was always happy with the kids. He was always happy with his wife. He loved them. He loved his family. And it was just a great family.
Well, things aren't great for everyone. See, Diane isn't just praying in church, she's paying the bills at home. Okay, Mark picks up an occasional shift bartending, but Diane, a nurse, is the breadwinner.
She seemed to be stable, ended up supporting him. He was the house husband, staying at home with the children.
And if Mark was a laid-back Mr. Mom, the actual mom of the house was civil, if a bit standoffish.
Was Diane friendly, warm?
You know, she was friendly to the point that I can tolerate you being in my driveway.
As the years wear on, life just keeps heaping more weight on Diane's slight shoulders, supporting her family in that cramped house and coping with some heavy challenges. 4th grader Brianna has a learning disability. Sean has autism. And oldest daughter Sarah, a college grad, is still at home with no job and a mountain of student debt. But inside that Page Street pressure cooker, Diane's beloved child is blossoming. 22-year-old Rachel, a star student. This is the relationship that would forge the whole family's fate.
She congratulated her every time Rachel had an accomplishment. When you look at it from the outside in, you think, that's a really close mother-daughter relationship, and isn't that great?
Ron Davis with ABC affiliate KSPR TV took us to the Stouty home.
And what was it about Rachel that drew her mom to her so intensely, do you think?
By all indications, Rachel is an exceptional human being. Very smart, very talented, artistic.
On Facebook, Diane raves about her beloved Rachel, her art, her academics. But nary a mention for her husband, Mark, who in April of 2012 is finally having his moment in the spotlight.
We had a good band. We were literally taking off.
He's flying high. Messing with Destiny is booking semi-regular gigs in Branson, joining the Aretha Franklin impersonators who get marquee billing. It's also Mark's birthday weekend. These are pictures from rehearsal that night, where Charles notices that Mark isn't quite himself.
What did you think was going on with him?
He was just so out of whack. And it wasn't like he was drunk or anything. He was just out of whack. He wasn't with us.
Then the next day, more odd behavior.
He just showed up at my door one day, Saturday. And I said, Mark. And he goes, oh, I'm here to celebrate my birthday, Charles. Only one thing struck me so out of place. His skin color.
What did it look like?
Yellow. His skin was actually a yellowish color.
So something was wrong with him.
Something was wrong with him.
He's right. On Easter Sunday, Diane comes back from church and finds her husband dead in bed.
I was devastated.
Did you have any inkling that anything was wrong? Did you get any clue that Mark's health might have been bad? I mean...
No.
Yet Diane tells authorities her husband's been sick and refused to see a doctor. There's a curious ring of blood around Mark's mouth, but it's not enough to alarm the medical examiner, who rules the death due to natural causes.
It was a bit of a shock, but I thought, well, you know, he doesn't really exercise, doesn't really cook, so probably not real healthy eating habits.
There was no autopsy, there was no testing. He was cremated. His ashes were scattered at a lake. That was it.
Diane organizes a memorial service at Redeemer Lutheran Church.
What was that like?
Well, it was sad. It was a sad event. The wife wanted us to do a song in his honor. So we played the song.
Mark's favorite song, Darkest Hour. This is their audio recording from that day. As the family copes with Mark's sudden death, there's a small consolation, a $20,000 life insurance payout, enough for Diane to move the family to a new neighborhood and a larger home.
They moved into this house right here.
Oh, big difference.
It definitely is. It's a step up from where they were.
When we come back, the Stouties may have moved on up, but their bad fortunes are just beginning.
The coroner's van was in their driveway.
Because whatever afflicted Mark seems to run in the family.
I said it was impossible. I was floored.
And eventually, police will suggest a different diagnosis.
My husband died last year of a heart attack.
Did he?
Stay with us.
"2020 Saturday" continues with more of A Family Plot.
At Redeemer Lutheran Church, Pastor Jeff Sippy tends his flock with fervor and passion.
We're jumping for Jesus.
And in the summer of 2012, devout organist Diane Stouty has good reason to lean on the pastor's sermons for strength.
Then Mary arose and went with haste in the hill country. And so you can see a woman with a mission.
Her husband Mark has recently died, and she's just moved with her 4 kids to this friendly street, hoping to put that sadness behind them. Rhonda Anderson, a church secretary, lives across the street.
Did you see them going and coming?
One day the garage door was open and I thought, I'm going to go over there and say hi. And just as I got over there, it was really like they looked at me and closed the garage door, really, because I could still see them standing there. So I don't think they wanted to talk to anybody.
Rhonda doesn't take it personally, leaving her private neighbors to themselves. Until weeks later, one Sunday in September, she looks out the window and is shocked by what she sees.
The coroner's van was in their driveway. A policeman said there was a death in the home. I was blown away.
Once again, death has knocked on the Stouty's door. The firstborn child, Sean, gone at 26. Diane tells police he had flu-like symptoms for 3 weeks.
Well, she reported she checked on him at about 6:30 in the morning, went to church, and then when she came back from church, found him not in bed anymore, but on the floor without a pulse.
She explains that her son had a history of seizures, and though like his dad, Sean has an odd ring of blood around his mouth, it doesn't look suspicious. So the medical examiner, after an autopsy, decides that the second Stouty family death in 6 months is due to prior medical issues.
They're thinking, wow, poor family. What bad luck. No one was asking questions.
And nobody questioned that story,
No.
even though her husband had died just months before.
Yes.
After police leave the scene, Rhonda walks over to check on her standoffish neighbor. Surprisingly, Diane answers the door.
I said, we just saw the coroner's van was here. Are you okay? Is everything all right? And she said, oh yeah, my son died.
Was she distraught?
No, she said it to me just like that. She said, my son died. Very matter-of-factly. I just was shocked.
Rhonda may be one of the few people Diane talks to about Sean's death, because for him, there is no funeral, no memorial, not even an obituary. Like his father, Sean is quickly cremated.
I'm like, oh my God, this mother must be devastated. She lost her husband, now she loses her son.
Now only the Stouty women are left. Diane, her darling Rachel, 12-year-old Brianna, and Sarah living their secluded lives.
I think they closed the doors even tighter because you didn't see them outside. I don't know how they even got their mail because we didn't see them at the mailbox.
Then, the following June, could it be true the Stouty plague strikes again? This time it's Sarah. Diane has seen this end badly before, so she takes her 24-year-old daughter to the emergency room.
Sarah is sick, goes to the hospital, gravely ill.
Sarah's in very grave condition. It does not appear that she is going to survive.
Sarah's kidneys shut down, pancreas and other organs failing. Worst of all, her brain is hemorrhaging blood. Diane turns to Facebook, maybe hoping for divine intervention. Asking for prayers as my daughter Sarah is in critical condition. Diane's brother-in-law, Michael Stouty, is floored by the post.
Wow, it's like a lot of bad luck here in this family. What's going on?
A good question. What is going on?
911, where is your emergency?
Finally, someone in Springfield, someone claiming to be close to the family, calls in a tip to police, hinting that the pious church organist may harbor an unholy family secret.
What did the caller say exactly?
That Diane Stouty might be responsible for 2 or 3 homicides. Again, brought up Mark's death, Sean's death being very close proximity to each other. Also spoke about the potential that Sarah was going to die as well.
So the caller was essentially blowing the whistle on Diane Stouty.
Correct, yes.
Armed with that anonymous tip, Springfield Police Detective Neil McCamus begins investigating. He starts by pulling the reports on Mark and Sean's deaths. The uncanny similarities are stunning.
Mark was experiencing flu-like symptoms for several days prior to his death. Same type of description with Sean. Now we have Sarah that's also in the hospital with flu-like symptoms.
Police are now connecting the dots. Then Detective McCamus visits the hospital, where he gets more troubling news from Sarah's doctor.
He had told me that they had performed several tests. They couldn't figure out what was going on, and he said that he was suspicious that it was a possible poisoning case.
So your radar goes up?
Definitely.
Police figure it's about time Diane Stouty answers some questions. She voluntarily comes to the station, and in interview room number 3...
Is it Stout?
Stouty.
One of the strangest police interviews we've ever broadcast begins. Diane discusses Sarah's critical condition.
I'm looking at the lab reports and it's like, you can't be living. Her kidneys were shot. She had a brain bleed. Her pancreas was acting up.
Well,
it's bad.
Okay.
I mean, she was as close to death as you could get.
Her affect may seem strange, but remember, this is a woman dealing with great stress, emotionally and financially, and her family's crumbling one by one.
My husband died last year of a heart attack. He had a lot of medical issues.
Did he?
So, yeah.
What kind of stuff did he have?
Oh, he had liver problems. He was diabetic. He wouldn't quit smoking.
Do you have a son as well?
No, not anymore.
Not
He
anymore.
died. He stopped breathing during one of his seizures.
I've just never heard of anybody dying from a seizure before. Is that pretty
can
common?
Happen. It can happen.
And I'll be back here.
The detective steps away, but when we come back, he does too, to turn up the heat on the Merry Widow.
There's been some things that have come up during the investigation.
It's time to learn what's really going on behind closed doors at the Stouty home.
I'm horrible. I'm a horrible mother.
Stay with us.
"2020 Saturday" continues with more of A Family Plot.
Over the course of 14 months, the quiet, God-fearing Stouty family seems as cursed as an Old Testament transgressor. Member after member inexplicably struck down. Mark Stouty, who fronted a blues band, and 26-year-old son Sean, both suddenly dead. 24-year-old Sarah lying in the ICU, her kidneys and brain failing. Now police want to know, is this a matter of bad luck or bad intentions? Which is why Diane Stouty, wife, mom, and church organist, is sitting in the interrogation hot seat.
Don't know what I can tell you.
With cameras rolling, Detective McAmis asks about her marriage, and for the first time glimpses a reservoir of resentment.
We were still married, but it was not what you call a good marriage.
Have there been any infidelities on either side?
He had. He was running around and he would drink and smoke pot and...
So he wasn't a very good guy is what you're saying?
Yeah. Even with all his faults, I still loved him.
In this police interrogation video, Diane reveals cracks in the foundation of the Stouty home.
Was there ever any physical abuse towards you?
No.
Nothing like that?
I mean, I didn't think it was that bad. But my kids would probably say otherwise. I wasn't happy.
Okay.
Now watch as he deploys a classic interrogation technique, shifting from inquisitor to sympathizer.
I'm a believer myself, so I understand where you're coming from on that.
He tells Diane sometimes even the righteous reach a breaking point. So what happened with Sarah?
As far as did I do something to her, I didn't do anything to her. I mean, I guess I could have taken her to the ER sooner, but I didn't know.
A major reveal. Diane may have delayed taking her daughter to the hospital.
And that was just kind of where her story started to crumble.
But I'm horrible. I'm a horrible mother.
Then a suggestion that Sean may have been suicidal. But again, she admits she did nothing to help.
He'd been threatening to kill himself, and I didn't want to bother because I was tired of it. I'm such a crummy person.
Now's your chance to tell us why and to show some remorse and ask for forgiveness.
Then she drops a bomb.
Put it really short and sweet. I knew they were drinking antifreeze.
Drinking antifreeze?
And I was so mad at them, I didn't want to take them in.
You knew, Diane, that they were drinking antifreeze because you were giving it to them.
And I didn't know what else to do. I really didn't.
And there it is. After 2 hours in the box, Diane Stouty quietly confessing to poisoning her own children with antifreeze.
This is a woman who's admitting that she killed her son and tried to kill her own daughter. What are you making of this?
I was just totally astonished, to be honest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There were times I didn't know what to say or how to react.
How long had you been giving them the antifreeze?
Maybe a couple of days.
And what were you putting it in?
Coca-Cola.
How much would you put in?
A couple of teaspoons, maybe.
But why antifreeze? She explains that it's easy to get and easy to disguise. The main ingredient, ethylene glycol, a colorless, odorless, sweet-tasting, and deadly chemical.
Killing someone with antifreeze is a classic way to try to mask what you're doing. It takes time, it's relatively flavorless, and there are no immediate signs after death unless you're looking for it.
Now it's all pouring out, a full-blown confession. Diane admitting she poisoned her husband Mark the exact same way, spiking his Gatorade with antifreeze. Apparently, she'd had it with a husband she considered an abusive deadbeat.
By then, I hated his guts. He would throw things at me. He would throw things at the kids. And I guess I just had enough.
Killing her husband's awful enough, but a mother poisoning her own children? This mom's motive is downright chilling.
Both Sean and Sarah would just basically, I don't know, trash the house and never helped support or even contribute. Sean would be interfering with whatever I would do.
So if he was just a constant bother, wouldn't leave you alone.
Oh, he was more than a bother.
With a pest, would that be a good word for it?
No, it was more than that.
My husband got on my nerves. I couldn't stand him. And my son, was a pest. I mean, did she seem like at her wit's end?
No, she, again, throughout, she stayed flat. Even when she's telling me that information, she seemed unfazed.
Yep, unfazed even by the ultimate kicker, why she poisoned her daughter.
And then with Sarah, you talked about, she wasn't getting a job, and then she had these student loans, and you were going to end up having to pay for them.
That's pretty much.
And you just had it with her as well.
I'm not a perpetual killer. I'm just stupid. I regret doing it. I really do. I've screwed up everybody. I've screwed up my whole family.
But it's too late. Here come the steel bracelets.
Right now, you're going to be under arrest.
Case closed? Not by a long shot. See, police are about to search the Stouty home and will find a purple diary with some very purple prose.
This was a key piece of evidence.
It will prove that Diane had a partner and eyes on another target in these horror movie homicides. Next.
2020 Saturday continues.
As the freight trains roll through Springfield, Missouri, the wheels of justice are turning slowly too. Police are interviewing 22-year-old Rachel Stouty, a star student, gifted musician and artist, her mom's pride and joy.
Mom was there every step of the way, really encouraging and cheerleading Rachel to be great.
But now her dearest mommy, Diane Stouty, is behind bars after confessing to the poisoning deaths of her husband and son and the attempted murder of Rachel's older sister.
Hey, Rachel.
Hi.
Can I get you to switch with me?
Okay.
Police just hit Rachel with the news.
Confusion, shock. I mean, that's... Nobody expects to have somebody that they know do that.
In this interrogation tape obtained by 2020, Detective McAmus lays it all out. Demure Diane has delicately engineered a ruthless culling of her own herd. Only the pious and the productive will make the cut.
Did you think somebody else was going to be next?
Darrow can be poisoned just for sitting around on YouTube. I don't do anything around the house. Brianna sure as heck doesn't do anything around the house.
Rachel fesses up that her mom had some unusual reading material.
We had a book on poisonous plants. I mean, she would talk about cyanide.
Then a critical moment across town. Crime scene investigators are busy combing through the Stouty home. These pictures show a house in disarray.
This was the home, the second residence.
Detective McAmus gave us a tour inside with permission from the new homeowner.
This was Sarah's room. There was couches, there were papers, just kind of things strewn about. She kind of had an office space set up. You could see there were some computers.
Laptops, flash drives, sculptures scattered about. And in the garage, pay dirt.
This is where our crime scene detectives located antifreeze on the workbench.
And right next to the antifreeze, the other compound in Diane's cruel chemistry, an otherwise unassuming six-pack of Coke.
Coke was described as what was given to both Sean and Sarah in terms of poisoning them.
The concoction right there.
Yes,
The
correct.
Coke and the
That is it.
antifreeze.
In the bedroom, a curious detective makes that dynamite discovery. This is Rachel's purple diary, haphazardly thrown on a shelf. Its contents a trove of sinister secrets.
It appeared to be a journal entry written by Rachel, knowing that Mark and Sean were getting ready to be killed.
So at first you're thinking this is a mother, an evil mother, who's tried to wipe out her family. And now you discover her daughter might be involved, helping her?
Yes.
That journal entry dated June 13th, 2011, nearly a year before Mark died. It reads,
"It's sad when I realize how my father will pass on in the next 2 months. Sean, my brother, will move on shortly after. It will be tough getting used to the changes, but everything will work out."
That's pretty chilling.
Very.
She's writing in a journal about killing her father and her brother.
It was extremely alarming.
I'm gonna have you wait here for just a second.
Back at the station, Detective McAmis leaves the room and gets briefed on that explosive diary. He returns in a different mood.
Rachel, do you recognize this?
Yeah, I remember this.
This is Missouri, and now it's time to show me.
You wrote this then, is what you're telling me? Okay.
I'd had a lot of really bad dreams about them dying. I talked to Mom about it, and she mentioned she was thinking of hurting them.
Rachel's bad dream just beginning. McAmis isn't buying her story or her tears.
What did you tell your mother?
That it would be quick. That it'd be easy.
Rachel reveals the awful truth. Mother's favorite was also Mother's little helper.
When did you guys come up with this plan?
I mean, we talked about it, like Christmas.
She's sitting right here. She's starting to tell you the whole thing, and she basically owns up to it.
To hear the daughter and the admissions that she's making and that this was a plan, and I was totally shocked, totally stunned by everything that had taken place. It was just a completely surreal feeling.
The mother-daughter duo carefully plan and research all options. Suffocation, pills, Googling how to kill your husband. The devout Christians even explored witchcraft.
Like on my computer specifically, there's a lot of Wicca sites.
Before settling on antifreeze.
Because in general, you could put it in something and you couldn't taste it.
What else did she tell you?
She wanted a specific tasteless one.
Rachel, whose idea was this?
Mom brought it up, and we discussed.
Mom recruiting daughter to help her systematically kill her husband, her son, and then poison her daughter? It's almost unheard.
It was supposed to be just Dad, but pretty soon Diane turned her attention to Sean, the son she thought was irritating. Listen to how little it took to end up on her hit list.
Sean, we argued on a lot, because I still think we could have put him in like a assisted living, but she wanted him out.
What did you say when she talked about killing Sarah?
Sarah was equally unneeded. We could have found someplace else for her. She was very adamant on that Sarah was just a burden, that Sarah needed to be taken care of.
Rachel, too, now under arrest, charged with murdering her father and brother. Her sister Sarah still fighting for her life.
When Rachel was arrested, there was a big clue found in her purse.
That's right. Her purse was searched, incident to arrest, and there was a note.
With her sister Sarah hospitalized, the star student Rachel had authored a poem worthy of Edgar Allan Poe.
Once upon a time, there were 6. Now, there are 3. Only the quiet ones will be left. My mom, my little sister, and me.
Wow. That's pretty cold stuff.
This is a very cold and depraved murder.
The Springfield poisoning case. 2 people dead, 2 in jail, 1 in the hospital.
The family was poisoned with antifreeze.
The next day, the tale hits the news like a twister. While down at the county courthouse, a rare sight. A mother and daughter, both arraigned for murder.
No way, this cannot be true. Not right here in our little neighborhood.
But no one is more surprised than Mark's old bandmate, Charles Alexander.
I was floored. And when I heard that he was poisoned, then I just cried. I collapsed. I said, I can't believe this woman did this.
Looking back, he begins recalling little quirks about his friend's wife.
I was never really allowed in the house for some strange reason. It was always at the garage. And it was so strange. I seen the antifreeze bottles sitting in the garage, and I'm thinking, who has antifreeze in the summertime?
Strangest of all, Diane's blasé manner after Mark died.
I went to her house and asked her what happened. And she proceeded to tell me like she was giving me a recipe to a cake. No emotions, no nothing.
Just matter of fact.
It was just like, oh, he died and you had 2 eggs.
Also shocked, Diane's fellow church members at Redeemer Lutheran. Well, maybe except for one. Remember that anonymous 911 caller who first tipped off police?
Do you ever find out who blew the whistle on her?
We were able to determine that the anonymous caller was actually the pastor at Diane's church.
The pastor turned her in?
Yes.
Pastor Jeff Sippy.
If you are not praying for your children, if you are not deeply invested in them, I'm going to tell you this, no one else is either.
The leader of the flock compelled by his own conscience to root out the wolf among them. He declined our requests for an interview.
So he knew that something was evil here.
I think he definitely had his suspicions. Diane's demeanor after the deaths, he told me he couldn't take those feelings, that he had to call it in.
When we come back, 2 Stouties in jail awaiting trial, 2 Stouties dead, and a 3rd in ICU. But this one regains consciousness and lives to tell. Did she suspect that her soda was spiked?
So you read in her journal she was trying to kill you?
She tells her story only to 2020 next.
"2020 Saturday" continues with more of A Family Plot.
You're looking at a woman who defied all the odds and lived to tell, surviving a vicious poisoning.
Well, this is where I sleep.
24-year-old Sarah Stouty has had to relearn to walk and talk.
I'm right here.
Her speech still stunted from the irreversible brain damage she suffered. Tonight, for the first time, she's speaking out about the horror and betrayal. Sarah lost her father Mark suddenly in 2012, and her brother Sean just 5 months later.
You found him dead.
Yes.
That must have been horrifying.
Traumatizing.
And more traumatizing, learning that her mom Diane was not her protector, but a predator, poisoning them all with antifreeze. And the icing on the cake, her younger sister Rachel was part of the plot.
But I was asking, why? Why did my mom and sister kill my dad and brother and harmed me?
Did you believe it, or did you sort of assume this can't be true?
I assumed that it wasn't true. They were innocent people being blamed.
But any trace of sympathy evaporates after Sarah reads in the newspaper why her mother poisoned 3 family members. She simply despised them.
They really planned this heinous crime. I was shocked. I just felt like I wanted to strangle my mom because of what she did.
The big question, why did Diane bother to rush Sarah to the hospital after leaving her son and husband to die at home? In a follow-up interview with a clearly rattled Rachel at the Greene County Jail, Detective McAmis wants to know.
When Sarah got so bad, why did you take her to the hospital?
Was it some last-minute tug of Christian conscience? Apparently, no.
I didn't want another one to die in the house.
And why is that?
Because houses are nasty after somebody's died in it. I get a lot of nightmares.
But what Rachel tells police next may be the most heinous of all. She and Mom Diane weren't exactly finished.
Brianna, who's she next? When were you guys gonna kill Brianna?
Sometime after Sarah.
Brianna, the youngest member of the Stouty clan, a tender 12 years old, too young to drive, but old enough to drink her mother's poison, antifreeze, in her root beer.
They were going to kill the little girl as well?
12-year-old girl.
What's wrong with these people?
And what was the reason for Brianna?
Because I know there's no way in hell I'd be able to take care of her. I can't take care of me. So how could I ever take care of her?
She had described Brianna as a burden they didn't want around the house. That was her explanation.
4 people? They would have killed 4 people in this house if they could have?
Correct. Rachel said that her mother was the only one that understood her. They could relate to each other, and it was just going to be those 2.
Do you think this was just a case of a mom and daughter who just, in some sick way, wanted to have a simpler life?
I don't think that there's going to be any acceptable, remotely rational explanation. The question is, how could this have possibly happened?
Did the police blow this thing? Could they have prevented Sarah's poisoning by connecting these dots?
I think it's easy to go back now, and there was nothing at that point to indicate anything malicious. Neither one of them knew about the other.
When you have physical findings at the autopsy that match the story that was given, typically other organs aren't looked at microscopically.
Saying antifreeze is difficult to detect unless you're looking for it. Later tests did confirm that Sean's body had the presence of that killer chemical, ethylene glycol, found in antifreeze. That news came a bit late for Sarah. Still, she's learned to accept her new reality, living in an assisted care facility, more alone than ever.
Do you still consider them family?
Not anymore. I consider them as killers who hate me.
You're angry.
I just felt like I want to slap both of them and calling them B words.
Their family plot uncovered, perhaps it's no surprise that mother-daughter murderers would eventually turn on each other. And sure enough, Rachel made a last-ditch effort to save herself with a plea deal.
Reaction to a guilty plea from Rachel Stouty, the Springfield woman charged with poisoning 3 of her family members.
Throwing her mom under the bus.
That's crucial. The fact that her daughter has pled guilty, seems ready to testify, could in and of itself be enough to convict her and potentially send her to death row.
When we come back, Diane Stouty in court. And for the first time, the daughter she poisoned coming face to face with her sister and mommy dearest.
And what would you say to Rachel and to your mom?
Stay with us.
"2020 Saturday" continues.
Judgment Day for Diane Stouty. She enters the courtroom, her back against the wall, facing death by lethal injection. But then...
You intend to enter a plea of guilty in this case?
Yes. Pleading guilty to killing her husband and son. Sentenced to life in prison without parole. Also in court, in the front row, the daughter she tried to kill, 24-year-old Sarah, facing her mom who poisoned her with antifreeze.
I'd prefer to be a survivor than a victim. She not only took away my dad and brother, but she took away my independence.
Callous to the end, Diane never bothering to look at her damaged daughter. Yet weeks later, when it's Rachel's turn to be sentenced, she dissolves into tears, reading a statement to her sister.
I'm sorry that I couldn't find the courage to stand up for what was right. Your suffering could have been prevented. And I hate myself for not being there for you.
And yet for all the pain and loss, today Sarah says she harbors no ill will.
I forgive my...
Someone shot someone. 3 people have been shot with crossbows.
Good evening. In a quiet cul-de-sac near Watford, a terrifying crime was discovered.
They were the murders that shocked the nation.
This is a very, very clearly planned attack.
This is now a major investigation into a triple murder.
A calculating jealous ex turned killer.
It literally would have been blood, death, and horror at every turn.
3 members of the same family, dead.
Many of the neighbours have described hearing screams.
The officers would have walked into what would have been some form of a bloodbath.
Sparking a major manhunt to find an armed murderer.
You have got a crossbow killer on the loose, with police scrambling helicopters to try and find him.
Kyle, if you're seeing or hearing this, please make contact with the police via 999.
But who is Kyle Clifford? the sadistic murderer behind these shocking atrocities.
He was manipulative, he was coercive.
We examine his past.
You don't expect that anybody you ever know is capable of doing that to another human being.
And the evidence that sentenced him to life.
He's in shops buying rope, he's buying a crossbow and bolts, going about his normal life.
This is the story of the crossbow killer.
He's very cold, he's very calculating, he is a very dangerous individual. Bushey is in Hertfordshire. It's classic commuter belt into London. It's a wealthy part of town. It's very quiet. People go there because they want a secluded lifestyle. They cannot possibly have expected what's to be visited upon them.
On the 9th of July 2024, a 999 call is made from a home in Bushey. The police arrive on the scene to find 3 women have been attacked with a weapon.
It would have been absolute carnage. You had 3 women, 2 of them that were dead, and the officers trying to resuscitate one individual. Their mindset would be thinking about what else is going on in those premises. Was the suspect there? Where was the weapon? Is there anybody else in the house?
The perpetrator had left the scene. They wouldn't have known that when they first got there. So searching the house, the gardens, and immediately then when he's not identified within the scene, they would be focusing their efforts on trying to understand A, who it is, and B, where they might be.
The question they'd be asking themselves is, why has somebody come into this home and inflicted such horrific injuries on those victims? Who was that person? Why did they do that? And where were they now?
12 minutes after the 999 call, and the 3rd victim has now died from her injuries. This has now become a triple murder investigation.
There would have been some very fast-time actions that needed to be undertaken to try and establish what had actually happened. For example, they needed to view Ring doorbell or some CCTV footage, or make some very urgent house-to-house inquiries. This has now become a manhunt for the suspect.
As forensics arrive at the house, the police begin to work out the details of the victims and how this murder has happened.
The scene would have been locked down very, very quickly in terms of preservation of the scene. There would be a full forensic examination of those victims.
Armed police are here. Must have been 20 police cars. The air ambulance has gone across.
In the last hour, police have said the 3 women were aged 25, 28 and 61, and they believe they were related.
Carol, mum, was stabbed and had multiple stab injuries, which would have created a gruesome scene. Louise has died as a result of a crossbow attack, and Hannah, they can see that she too has been shot with a crossbow.
Now, police are appealing for anyone in this area, particularly, who may have heard or seen something between lunchtime and 7 o'clock.
Well, we remember the news that 3 women had been killed in a leafy suburb, and then we start hearing that there's rumours the weapon was a crossbow.
This area of Bushey is in lockdown, and you can understand why. Parents aren't allowing their children to go out and play. Well, would you? That would have been a town living in utter fear, a mixture of fear, horror, and immense grief that in this house of horrors there are 3 innocent women dead. They have been slaughtered in the midst of this town.
Someone shot someone. 3 people have been shot with crossbows.
My producer phoned me as the story developed, and it was the most extraordinary set of circumstances.
There's been police helicopters. They must have been there for 4 or 5 hours. Police everywhere down the side road still.
The fact that a crossbow's been used as part of this attack is really significant. They're not as accessible or as widely used or as available as even firearms on our streets today in the UK. And somebody has gone in there with intent to do serious violence.
You hear of a triple murder and you're immediately trying to work out why. And already you think 3 members of a family, this is probably someone who knew the family. And was it to do with debts? Could it be money related or something relationship related?
Based on the horrific scene that unfolded for those officers, it would have been clear to them that this was some form of a targeted attack.
This was a manhunt, but not just any manhunt, a manhunt for someone with a crossbow, so someone extremely dangerous who has committed a triple murder was out there somewhere with this extremely dangerous weapon.
Good evening. In a quiet cul-de-sac near Watford, a terrifying crime was discovered.
Emergency services, including 2 air ambulances, were called just after 7 o'clock.
In the small town of Bushey, 3 women have been found brutally murdered in their home.
A mother and her 2 adult daughters killed in what police are calling a targeted attack.
A crossbow and knife attack, which took place inside their own home.
Leaving a community frozen in fear of a crossbow killer on the loose.
It's an absolutely horrific thing to happen here. Many of the neighbours have described hearing screams.
A crime almost unimaginable in its scale and nature.
And Hertfordshire police facing one of Britain's biggest and most gruesome murder investigations.
The officers who first attended on the scene would never have and will never see again what greeted them. It literally would have been blood, death and horror at every turn. They knew they would have a crime of enormous gravity on their hands.
This is now a major investigation into a triple murder.
The investigation will move at pace, and very quickly the police will understand and identify key factors. The thing that's really important when police respond in a case like this is the media latching onto it really, really quickly. So who are your victims? What do we know about them? And who's their next of kin?
As the details came out, the identities of the women, the fact that they were related to each other and their link to someone who is a public figure, all of those details made this such a shocking and extraordinary story.
This is one of the victims, Carol Hunt, who's the wife of the BBC racing commentator John Hunt. It's thought the other women killed are 2 of their daughters, Hannah and Louise.
There's a deep sense of shock on these quiet streets. The 3 lives taken so cruelly.
I knew Hannah well because I've been going to her for my nails for probably 8 years.
She hadn't turned up for work and they were wondering why she was late, and of course it's transpired why, and that really hit hard.
Everything we know about the Hunt family suggests they were a really, really happy family.
The Irish Hennessy, Carlingford Lock!
John Hunt, a public figure, a really well-known BBC and Sky Sports commentator for horse racing, known in the community and known around the country.
I know quite a few people in the racing fraternity and they have nothing but good to say about the man. He seemed to put together a wonderful family. He's got a loving wife. His wife Carol, the mother of the 3 daughters, so they're living at the house in Bushey. Then you've got Louise, Hannah, her sister, and another sister, Amy, who fortunately was not at the premises on that fateful day.
To have children still living in the family home in their 20s suggests just how happy they were.
We know that Louise also ran her business from home, so she had a lovely little pod in the garden where she ran her dog grooming business. I think we really get the sense when you hear the inner workings of the home and how Louise worked there and the girls still felt comfortable to come back, that they really wanted to be together and that they enjoyed spending time together. It was a really happy place to be where everyone felt really, really welcome.
Such a lovely family, like you could just tell they were a real tight-knit family. They used to go on holidays together.
I miss Carol. I just really missed her and I can't believe this has happened. We were friends, really close friends.
John had a picture book family. He's living in a very nice part of the country. He's respected in his profession. He's doing a job he loves. He's doing a job he's bloody good at. He's got a loving wife. He's got 3 gorgeous daughters. And then this is visited upon him.
Initial police investigations determined that the original 999 call was made by Hannah as she lay dying in her doorway.
It was her sister Hannah who called police to their quiet cul-de-sac in Bushey.
Police and paramedics had been called by Hannah, who they found in the doorway. She had been shot with a crossbow.
Police receive a breakthrough as to the identity of the family's killer.
The sister who has arrived, Hannah, walked in these horrors without any knowledge. Her mother dead. Her sister bound, dead. She then gets fired another crossbow bolt.
What we know is that Hannah, who was lying there dying, had managed to very, very bravely, she made a 999 call to the police.
As part of that call to the operator, she was able to provide a name of the person who was responsible.
Hannah identified her sister's ex-boyfriend, so that's a massive breakthrough. The police now have a name, Kyle Clifford.
Kyle Clifford was the #1 suspect. They would be working very, very fast time on intelligence records to actually have some further information to establish who this Kyle Clifford was. Was he known to them? Had he come to notice from the police before? Did they have an address for him? Did they know about a car that he was driving? As much information as they possibly could have to be able to locate him at the earliest opportunity.
The police are obviously able to do background checks very quickly, and they will ascertain that Clifford actually had lived the most unremarkable life. He's had one brief involvement with police in the past, but he's pretty much an unknown, save for the fact that they have very good reason to believe he's just murdered 3 members of the same family.
Where is he? Police hunt a man after a triple murder in Hertfordshire.
This is the man police have been trying to track down, Kyle Clifford.
They say he may still be armed with a crossbow and are asking the public to call 999 if they see him, but warn not to approach him.
Kyle Clifford was the #1 suspect for the police, and it was imperative that they try to find him as fast as they possibly could.
They're looking for a man who's prepared to commit acts of extreme violence. He's very cold, he's very calculating, and he has planned this out. He is a very dangerous individual who needs to be caught as soon as possible.
Significant resources were put into this. Officers from Hertfordshire and from the Metropolitan Police would have been working collaboratively. They used helicopters, firearms officers. They conducted house-to-house inquiries.
This was a mammoth operation. Dozens of police officers looking for him, searching all across Hertfordshire.
The police are focused on the areas of Hertfordshire and in the vicinity of Kyle Clifford's home around the Enfield area. His house was raided by police and he wasn't found there.
Hertfordshire Police said it was the largest scale manhunt they've ever conducted to date. They took the quite rare step of actually releasing a lot of details about the killer, which police don't often do. You had a man who had committed 3 murders, was still armed with a crossbow. They needed to get him and get him quick.
Our overarching objective today is to protect public safety and to locate Kyle Clifford in the wake of what has been an horrific incident involving what is currently believed to be a crossbow, but other weapons may also have been used.
You need to make it clear to the public he is dangerous. Quite often we like to protect some of the aspects of the investigation, but of course the thing about a crossbow is it can be fired from a significant distance, and you don't want people being lulled into that false sense of security that I can see him from X distance away or X metres away and I'm safe, because quite clearly you might not be safe.
The priority is to be able to close the net, to be able to confine this suspect into one particular area.
22 hours after the horrific killings comes a breakthrough. There's been a sighting of Kyle Clifford and police are closing in. But as they do, he does the unthinkable.
He's been seen going into a cemetery in Enfield. Once cornered in the cemetery, as the police move in, Clifford decides to try and take his own life by shooting himself with a crossbow. But it doesn't kill him.
He shot himself with the crossbow in the chest. And from then on, he's paralysed from the chest down.
Given that his injuries were so serious, their priority was to provide medical attention to him and to ensure that he was taken to hospital where he could be treated for his injuries.
Police finally have their man. But now they need to find out what could drive someone to commit 3 horrific murders. After killing 3 members of the same family, triple murderer Kyle Clifford shot himself with a crossbow as the manhunt closed in on him. While in hospital under arrest, police are gathering evidence, trying to paint a picture of the events leading up to the murders and the person who committed them.
Group, listen in! Prepare to double! Prepare to double!
You don't expect that anybody you ever know or come into contact with is capable of doing that to another human being. You know, the spitefulness and the callousness is just, you can't really put into words, I suppose.
Connor Wilson is a former captain in the British Army. He would take new recruits through their 14-week training programme.
I met Kyle Clifford in October 2019. He was one of the first recruits I took at the Army Training Centre. One of the early impressions I had of Kyle Clifford was just insecure, immature young boy. Once they've got their uniform and things, we give them a lesson on social media security and personal security. So about a week later, I would go through their social media profiles. Now, the good recruits would have made them all private. Kyle Clifford had a mirror selfie of him in full army uniform as his profile picture. Now, it was always the immature ones that would do that, the ones that want to impress. Look at me, I'm in the British Army.
Kyle didn't know who he was. The fact that he chose the army is really interesting because people in the army have a very strong sense of identity, a very strong pathway in terms of a career. I think he stepped into something that actually had an identity already created for him. It's very telling to me that he chose a career like that and yet didn't flourish in that environment. He couldn't really hack the pace.
One of the lessons I would take them through would be a speed, distance, time calculation. So if I travel for 60 miles at 60 miles an hour, how long would it take? And he could not grasp the concept. He couldn't get it, and he would come frustrated and angry that he wasn't getting it. It's not abnormal that we get people that struggle academically. It's absolutely fine and we're prepared for it. But I remember how annoyed he was that he couldn't grasp it.
I unfortunately had to find myself disciplining Kyle Clifford quite often. He was on a section commander's warning for not listening by week 5, which is quite unheard of. I had to constantly tell him to do the same basic things over and over again. It's because he felt like he didn't have to listen to me. I do believe had he had a male section commander, that his performance would have been different. Clifford at times struggled to fit in with his peers. It was known that he wasn't well liked by everybody in the section and within the platoon as a whole.
With the section commanders, he would shrink in their presence. He looked at them like a lost puppy. He seemed to quite enjoy the authority and the power dynamic, particularly amongst the male members of the training team.
It was known that Clifford was flirtatious with the other female recruits. I felt at times he probably saw me as a bit of a peer. Obviously being a female, he'd bought me some milk from the shop during a break time, and when he returned I asked him, "How much do I owe you?" And his response was, "Your smile is enough for me, Corporal," which is inappropriate, to say the least.
You know, some recruits you do wonder how they're going to get on. You have high hopes for some. Clifford was never one that I wanted to check in on particularly. He was just another soldier I took through. So I never gave Clifford much thought. In fact, I don't think I ever thought of him again.
Kyle Clifford did not complete his minimum contract with the British Army. That is usually 4 years. He was out within 2. I wasn't surprised to find out that he'd left, but it is unusual.
What comes across is just how unremarkable Kyle Clifford was. Someone who was immature and insecure, who had failed in life, essentially.
It was in December 2022, on a dating app, when Kyle first met Louise Hunt, who he would later go on to tragically murder, along with her family. During their 18-month relationship, the couple would enjoy trips away together, and Kyle regularly visited the family home.
Louise was an open-hearted person. She entered this relationship for all of the right reasons. She did love Kyle. He was very nice and very charming. He knows how to present himself to groups of people to appear like he's a nice guy. What he wants to do is lure people in with his personality and his persona. But once he has those people there, the real Kyle would come to the surface.
Perpetrators of abuse, they will wine and dine, love bomb you, zoom into any vulnerabilities you might have, say the things that you want to hear. Louise would have been looking for the good in him.
It didn't take long for cracks to appear in Kyle's facade.
There were lots of red flags from Kyle Clifford during his relationship with Louise, and we know now that she had reservations about him.
Louise felt this toxicity building over time. It was a very toxic relationship for her.
She feels he's unnecessarily aggressive. She also claims that sometimes he makes racist comments and he has a temper.
Her family were never really that keen on him. Her friends around her were not that keen either.
He was manipulative, he was coercive. And Louise's friends did witness a change in their friend and a change in her personality, her demeanour.
A perpetrator of abuse will be very subtle when they start putting these terms and conditions into the relationship. You know, perhaps they might think, you know, you're wearing too much foundation, or I don't like the fake tan, I don't like the false eyelashes.
Louise stopped wearing makeup because of things that Kyle had said, chipping away at Louise and how she felt about herself, making her feel small. It was all a part of his grander plan to make her feel like she was trapped, she couldn't go anywhere. And we know also that he started to do really inflammatory things in public and kind of bring her down and humiliate her. Louise was starting very early on to become aware of the fact that this was not a good match. But it's never that easy to walk away.
Early on in their relationship, Kyle revealed a shocking truth about his family.
It's emerged Clifford has a brother who is also in jail after killing someone following a road rage incident.
In terms of family dynamics, from knowing what we know now, about what Kyle's done, about what his brother did, must clearly come from a dysfunctional family, whereas obviously in contrast to that, Louise's family seemed wonderful.
Louise was never happy about him visiting his brother in prison, sometimes every other week. She had said to her friends he had never shown any sort of sense that his brother should show remorse for what he did. What ended Louise Hunt and Carl Clifford's relationship was they went to an event and he was making comments about previous relationships he'd had.
It was too much. He had humiliated her again. He made a point of telling Louise that he had slept with several of the guests.
He even suggested he had been seeing people at that time as well. We now know that he did have other partners at the same time as Louise. That was when Louise decided to end that relationship.
With Clifford still in hospital, the police are gathering evidence, piecing together how a breakup turned into a bloodbath.
When you're running any murder investigation, and particularly one of this magnitude, the digital forensic strategy is really, really key. The victim's phones, the doorbell cameras that are present there, and just looking at the devices he's used. Phones tell us so much. At the end of June, 26th of June, Louise had ended the relationship with Kyle. Just a few days later, he had been looking at Carol's profile on social media. He'd taken active steps to get himself some weapons.
He'd bought a crossbow online. He'd also ordered an air rifle, which actually wasn't delivered.
Crucial to the investigation is CCTV of Clifford in several DIY stores.
One of the key moments for the police is when they've identified and got on CCTV him purchasing the rope, the duct tape, and also some petrol cans, which we can assume he was going to use to try and destroy any evidence that was left at the scene. By the 6th of July, Kyle has the crossbow. He's also purchased a knife online as well, a significant kitchen knife.
He's in shops buying rope, he's buying a crossbow and bolts. And all the while, he's kind of going about his normal life. So there was footage of him in the gym in the days before the attack. He's seen at a garden centre with his parents on the morning of the attack. And he knows that he's got this lethal plan.
I think what we need to remember about offenders like Kyle is this is someone who wants the control, and part of the enjoyment they get is from the planning of the event. That planning plays a hugely important part in kind of bolstering those feelings of dominance and control, which is ultimately what he wanted.
Police use the evidence they have gathered to create a timeline of what had taken place on the afternoon of July 9th.
Police have been able to establish that he left his home just after 1 o'clock, 7 minutes past 1 in the afternoon on the 9th of July. He was already armed then.
Clifford drives to the Hunt family home. He searches Horse Racing Today on his phone to establish the whereabouts of Louise's dad, sports commentator John Hunt.
He was looking at which racetrack John was going to be at that day, and that presumably was to ensure he wasn't present at the house when he went there.
This is a very, very clearly planned attack, very meticulous, and he had a real clear idea of what he was going to do.
At 2:32 p.m, Carl Clifford knocks on the door of the Hunt family home under the false pretense that he is returning Louise's belongings.
We know from the doorbell footage of their own home address that he's presented with a rucksack which has a weapon in it when he's purporting to be returning Louise's items.
Carol, Hannah and Louise and Amy's mum, showed Clifford a huge amount of kindness. Even on the day he turned up at their house to kill them, it was Carol who answered the door.
Clifford said he was just dropping off some of Louise's stuff. Mrs. Hunt asks Clifford how he was, and he replied, "I'm good, thank you. What's wrong? You look like..." Mrs. Hunt finished his sentence and said, "I've seen a ghost." A faint scream is heard shortly after.
Just 7 minutes after entering the property, Kyle attacks Carol with a knife.
The minute she turns her back, the mother is fatally stabbed.
Having killed Carol, Kyle has then gone back to his own car where he's taken out the crossbow before just walking back into the premises where he's then laid in wait for Louise to finish work.
Louise Hunt is in a pod in the garden where she runs her dog grooming business as Kyle waits in the house next to her mother Carol's dead body.
It's thought he waited in some region of an hour, just waiting to snare his victim.
At 4:13 p.m, Louise comes into the house.
Louise comes in, and of course she's greeted by that horrific sight of her mum lying there.
Clifford restrains Louise with duct tape around her ankles and wrists.
At this point, Carl Clifford was searching her phone and looking at who she'd been talking to on her phone over the previous days and weeks as well. He used Louise's phone to ascertain how much time he had at that house before John Hunt would eventually get home.
Police discover that Louise was put through even further torment in the house.
She is then subjected to that horrific ordeal. He raped Louise, his former girlfriend.
The forensic examination now shows that Louise was subjected to that ordeal probably for around 2 hours, 2.5 hours, which just would have been a terrifying experience for her. Not being able to do anything to protect herself any further, knowing what's already happened to her mum and being threatened in the way that she had been, as well as being further abused, must have been horrific.
After 2 hours of brutal torture, Kyle murders Louise with the crossbow. Shortly after, her sister Hannah arrives home.
Hannah returns home at around 10 to 7. So if you think now, this whole ordeal's been actually going on for several hours from when Carol first opened the door. And within minutes of Hannah entering the address, she too is shot.
In some of the most distressing details of what happened, Hannah Hunt has been hit with the crossbow, but is still alive. Carl Clifford has left, but she manages to somehow alert police.
She was able to make that 999 call to police, which was vital, A, in securing their response, but also in naming the offender as their only living witness at that point. And she was able to text her boyfriend. Those actions show true resilience and heroism of her, and the fact that despite suffering that horrific attack, she still did all she could to make sure there was justice for that family.
More than 4 hours after he arrived, Clifford flees the property. CCTV footage shows him calmly walking back to his car with the weapon under his arm. Ten weeks after this horrific crime, Kyle Clifford is released from hospital, paralysed from the chest down. Police can now conduct their interviews in custody.
Do you accept, Kyle, that based on the evidence, that this is a premeditated murder of 3 people?
3 members of one family have been brutally murdered in their own home. Kyle Clifford has shot himself with the very crossbow he used to murder his ex-girlfriend, Louise, and her sister, Hannah. His botched suicide attempt has left him paralysed from the chest down, so he is now wheelchair-bound, as police prepare to interview him for the first time.
Do you accept, Kyle, that based on the evidence, that this is a premeditated murder of 3 people?
He's there in the interview room, and clearly he's in his wheelchair because he's now disabled. Despite the gravity of the offences, the gruesome nature of the evidence that's being presented to him, he still is quite nonchalant about what's happened. There's no remorse there. There's no apology.
What gave you the right to deprive Carol of seeing her future grandchildren?
You could see from the officers and his body language that he was completely arrogant and he wasn't happy, or certainly was unwilling to help the police with their investigation.
You sit here in front of us and she's dead. Tell me how this has happened.
Police wanted answers as to why this had happened, but they weren't going to get any from Kyle Clifford.
Louise's belongings were your ticket into that address, yes?
Whilst Clifford was in hospital, police searched his phone and found some shocking evidence.
Police, they bring in the fact that they had found on his phone these notes, and one of them is entitled Last Letter.
This last letter was a suicide note Clifford wrote for his family.
Please don't think of this as me throwing my life away. I've lived, and I am grateful for everything and everyone that has been a part of it. It is now my time to leave and be at peace, as this is what I ultimately want. You all have to take care of each other and speak to each other, as that'll be the best thing for you all. I love you all so much. You okay, Carl? Carry on.
We know that Kyle preemptively left a suicide note on his phone, and I think when Kyle wrote this, he would have been in a deep state of victimhood. There was nothing about the family that he's actually hurt. It was all about how he was feeling and his sense of rejection, and he wanted to really tell the world that they needed to feel sorry for him when he wasn't here.
It feels as if Kyle Clifford is sort of doing PR for himself. He knows that this note would be released publicly after his death. Obviously, his attempt to end his own life has failed. But there is an attempt there again to control the narrative.
When you wrote that note, had you already planned the murders of Louise, Carol and Hannah?
Throughout police interviews, Clifford answers no comment to pretty much every question. It's quite clear that he doesn't want to cooperate.
Clifford showed no emotion, his nonchalant behaviour matching the same calmness he displayed when leaving the Hunts' home with the crossbow under his arm.
You walk away from that house. You've just killed 3 people and you stroll away like you're going down the shops.
As this case unfolds and this evidence is identified and the sequence of events of him taking active steps to prepare himself shows that he has thought about this. This is not a spur-of-the-moment decision.
There's 2 ways of looking at how he responds. Is he absolutely devoid of any sense of remorse or guilt in that he refuses to comment? Or has he, now that he's had a time to physically recover from the injuries and possibly emotionally recover from whatever it was that came over him, pure evil that day he committed the acts, has he actually realised what he's done and he can't even bring himself to talk about it? Only he knows.
You're calm, you're collected, you're considered. There is nothing about that which suggests that you've gone there for anything else than to kill an almost an entire family. I'm right in what I'm saying, aren't I, Kyle?
No comment. It's astounding, really, in many ways, to see his response here. I think that really the least he could have done in the face of all of the evidence is, at this point in time, to say that he was guilty of the offences. And yet everything he's doing is just, it's consistently and constantly about self-preservation. It's consistently a case of him putting himself in victim mode, of him pretending to be low status. He whimpers a little bit when the police are saying what they're saying in terms of what he wrote to his family. Interesting that he sniffles at that point because, again, he's feeling sympathy for himself. We have to remember the barbaric nature of what he did in that house. The two don't marry. This small little boy that you see in a wheelchair, we have to remember that this is the same person that stabbed a woman to death, then very calmly, in a composed way, walked to the car to collect a crossbow, to come back, to wait silently with a dead body while he waited for his next victim, to then gag, tie, bound and rape a young woman while holding her hostage for probably what was the longest hours of her life, to then kill another person. It's important that we don't separate the fact that this is the same person as we look at this pitiful, pitiful character, this coward sat before us in this police room.
The police investigation into Clifford also discovered that he was looking at social media sites promoting misogynistic behaviour.
He's looking at the work of Andrew Tate, the influencer. The malign influence of people like Tate, who despises women, is a misogynist, questions the role of women, questions the responsibilities of women, suggesting that women are always the weaker sex, they always come to men, they always need them to solve the crimes. You're starting to get a picture of the sort of influence he had.
The evidence against Clifford is overwhelming. And on the 16th of September 2024, he was charged with 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of possession of an offensive weapon, and 1 count of false imprisonment.
Here are former soldiers charged over the murders of the wife and 2 daughters of the BBC racing commentator John Hunt.
Appearing in court today via video link from prison, he told the magistrate he had injured his voice and nodded to confirm his name and date of birth.
Three months later, Clifford was also charged with the rape of Louise Hunt. At the same hearing, he pleaded not guilty to the charges of murder, 2 charges of possession of an offensive weapon, and false imprisonment.
Put yourself in the position of the father and the surviving daughter. Just imagine, that actually makes the pain and the grief worse, because John and the surviving daughter think we will have to possibly sit through weeks and weeks and weeks of trying to get to the truth, which everyone knows this is a jilted lover turned killer.
Clifford appears via video link to face all charges, but at the last moment, changes his plea.
So he originally pleaded not guilty, which he then changed to guilty, and I think that was very simply just because his legal team told him it would be better to do so. What's particularly interesting to me is that he's never pleaded guilty to rape. It seems to fit the profile that he would want to show the world that he controlled Louise to the end and he was very dominant and that he did this thing, but at the same time, I think he's embarrassed because there might be particular family members on his part that would be privy to that. I think he can't outwardly admit what he did for that reason, even though the evidence speaks for itself. It's not something that he can bring himself to admit to, because in a strange way for him, it shows a weakness on his part. There's no desire, there's no care about anyone else in this scenario. It's all about him. And so to admit that this is something that he'd done, arguably he's going to be questioned in a different way. And so more would be required of him. He won't do that to himself.
The rape trial was due to start at Cambridge Crown Court.
Because he didn't admit to the rape, it meant there had to be a trial. Everyone had to sit through horrific detail, watch and listen to really harrowing evidence.
Everyone except Clifford, who refused to leave his cell.
There was the possibility he could have joined in on a video link from Belmarsh prison, where he currently is, but instead we're told he's not leaving his cell and he will take absolutely no part in this trial.
Kyle to some degree has enjoyed, dare I say it, putting the family through what he has, because it shows again what control he has over the situation.
Did he not attend because he doesn't like to be presented as someone who's perhaps not the strong man that he was because he's now disabled and in that wheelchair? Or is it because he's still exerting control over the family of Louise, Hannah and Carol and wants to be able to say, it's my choice whether or not I come into court?
Someone like Kyle is always going to avoid court because he would have to put himself in an uncomfortable situation, and this is not something he will ever do.
Clifford is the 6th high-profile defendant who has refused to attend their trial in the last 3 years.
It's not uncommon for these criminals to refuse to come to court. There has been a change in the law that's given judges more power to insist that they do attend court, but the punishment is 2 extra years on their sentence. Now, for someone like Clifford, who is facing 3 whole life orders, 2 extra years is not going to make any difference.
The prosecution presented their evidence over around 2 or 3 days, and some really, really horrific details given out in court that will be hard for anyone to listen to, not least the family members of those concerned. Clifford's defence was that his DNA on Louise Hunt came from when they were going out, and that it had laid on Louise for more than 10 days or so. It was essentially historical. In court, the prosecution said there was absolutely no possibility of that, and frankly, this was a really, really flimsy and offensive defence.
The defence presented no evidence.
It's really stressful for any family to have to attend court for something like this, but for the Hunt family especially so. They were there for all 4 days of this trial, and they maintained this dignity throughout.
After 45 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict: guilty.
Today, this man, Kyle Clifford, the man who mercilessly attacked them, was found guilty of raping his ex-partner, Louise.
Clearly relief from the Hunt family, and a round of applause as well in the public gallery that this trial was now over.
Kyle Clifford was now ready to receive his fate, and the whole country, so shocked by this crime, were waiting to see justice served.
This was the sort of final moment, really, for everyone to see it finished and for everyone to get closure, but most importantly for the Hunt family to see Kyle Clifford be put behind bars for the rest of his life.
The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt.
In a crime that shocked the nation, Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah and her mother Carol were killed at their home in Bushey in Hertfordshire. Cambridge Crown Court heard how Louise's former boyfriend, Kyle Clifford, had stabbed Carol to death before raping Louise and, armed with a crossbow, shooting her and her sister Hannah. 5 days after being convicted of these heinous crimes, Kyle Clifford was due to be sentenced, and the country held its breath.
It was a case with huge interest from the media.
Kyle Clifford was not in court, refusing to leave his cell in Belmarsh prison, but the family still delivered their impact statements.
There are days in this job that stay with you more than others. And I think, particularly John's statement, there's bits of that I won't forget for a long time.
I am so proud of all my girls. Unlike you, Kyle, at every step of their lives they made the correct choices to improve themselves as people. Louise enjoyed more success and fulfillment in one morning than you achieved in your entire miserable life.
And there were tears in court as he spoke, not just among friends and family, but you know, within the legal teams, within the press. John talked about the family inviting Clifford over for Christmas. He spent 4 or 5 days with them over Christmas in the family home. And to think then, not much more than 6 months later, in that same home, Clifford attacked the family. And I think that really struck a chord with a lot of people.
For each of these 3 murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. That means a sentence from which she will never be released.
The court case, which heard of the brutal murders, coincided with International Women's Day.
Unfortunately, it's too late to protect those already taken from us.
For the last 10 years on International Women's Day, the MP Jess Phillips stands in Parliament and reads the names of the women that have been killed by men in the last year. It was 95 this year, and it included Carol, Hannah and Louise.
Carol Hunt, Louise Hunt, Hannah Hunt.
It took about 4 minutes to read out all those victims' names. It's shocking, and that's the real, tangible, devastating impact that misogyny can have.
And we cannot stand and say anymore that lessons will be learned. What I promise is that I will actually learn the lessons.
Back in court, John Hunt's statement paid tribute to the courage his daughter had shown in ending her abusive relationship, and he urged others to do the same.
Like any woman should be allowed to do, she worked you out, despite repeated deceit, and said enough is enough. I hope women around the world will take Louise's bravery as a shining beacon for their lives. If you feel enough is enough, then it is.
We saw in the trial the links made to content created by Andrew Tate. You know, there's so much misogyny online that young men are consuming, and there are real-life consequences.
Domestic abuse isn't always physical and violent. There is now more awareness around coercive control, which became a crime in 2015.
Coercive control is really hard to describe unless you've actually been in it. A lot of people say, well, I don't know whether I'm being abused because they've never actually hit me. They're very manipulative people. I mean, if only they came with a warning sign with a tattoo on their forehead. It would be great for victims and survivors, but they don't.
He wasn't happy with just killing the person who he said had hurt him. He wanted to kill all the women present in that family, and he thought by killing those 3 women, he got the ultimate control. But of course he hasn't.
The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt.
There were clenched fists and pats on the back in celebration among friends and family when the judge told them that Carl Clifford will never be released from prison. And as they left court, nods of acknowledgement between the jurors and John Hunt.
I think it's really difficult for any of us to understand the everlasting impact that the death of Hannah, Louise and Carol will have on Amy and John. They have to deal with this now for the rest of their lives.
Whatever misery lies ahead for you, remember on your dying day, there will be no release for you. The screams of hell, Kyle, I can hear them faintly now. The red carpet will come out for you. You will realize your miserable fate will last for eternity.
Revealing the inner workings of a murder investigation like never before. Join detectives inside the incident room to witness how cold-blooded killers are brought to justice. Brand new next Wednesday at 8. Next, Killed by Our Daughter, the McCulloch Murders.